It happened again. You knew it would happen. I didn't want to believe it, but it did. Let's get into it. I got the con crud. New York City Comic Con was a blast. I made it back home on Monday, felt fine. Tuesday, sore throat, runny nose. It's gonna be a rough vid, is what I'm saying.
And once again, I didn't get the con crud. I'm starting to think whatever's in that hand sanitizer is what's getting you sick.
I'm beginning to think it doesn't work, Jem. Real talk, at conventions, I am known to be always carrying hand sanitizer and spraying my friends. And if I ever spray you, it sounds weird. Don't take offense to it. Trying to battle that con crud. Hit the like and subscribe, by the way. We make this video every single week, whether I'm sick or not. We have at the list, at number 10, All-Star Western number 10. This came out in 1972, and it's the first appearance of Jonah Hex.
This is only the third time that this book has made it on the Hot 10. The last time we spoke about it, it was 2 weeks in a row, mid-January, and this was just a few weeks before James Gunn announced his plans for the first chapter of the DCU, and Jonah Hex wasn't a part of it.
The first chapter, titled Gods and Monsters, didn't feature Jonah Hex anywhere on the slate. So why is this spiking? Well, James Gunn did mention that we didn't get the full reveal. Could there be more announcements coming? Could it be for chapter 2? Possibly. But I think some members remember the November 22 tweet celebrating Jonah Hex by James Gunn on Twitter, him stating that it was his favorite Western hero.
And we did get a Jonah Hex movie 13 years ago. It's one of those obscure type of characters that you could definitely see James Gunn bring back to light. And like we said, they only revealed half of the plan, and there's still a chapter 2. There have been 75 more slabs added to the census since we talked about this back on January 16th, so pretty much just 9 months ago. This book is super tough and high grade. There's only 22 9.6s, and the last sale is also the record high for $3,000 in March of this year, and then the 9.8 with only 8 copies. Also, the last sale is the all-time high from April of this year for $13,800.
We haven't seen anything higher than a 9.0 since those records were broken. That means that price correction is imminent. And we have a record-breaking sale to discuss. An 8.0 last sold in January for $680. It's up 3% with an all-new record high of $699. The 8.5 is up 11%, and the 9.0 just sold for $1,100 for an increase of 3%.
New York Comic Con is over, and you don't have to hunt down on a bunch of different websites to figure out all of the variants that came out. You can do that all in one place. It's on the Key Collector app.
That's how I used to have to hunt down exclusives. I had like multiple tabs open trying to figure out every store that was releasing something, and now you don't have to. Use code TOM101 on the best comic app in existence, Key Collector Comics, available for both Androids and iPhones. There's a whole New York City Comic Con exclusive category filled to brim. There's like 200 plus exclusives that dropped, and you can learn about all of them and support the show.
On to number 9 on the list, we've got some more symbiote goodness with Amazing Spider-Man 361, the first appearance of Carnage.
November 15th, we're going to see Carnage reunited with his original host, Cletus Cassidy. And Carnage is like low-key overpowered right now. He has been sourcing superpowers from other villains to make him impenetrable, invulnerable. And we're going to see what Carnage chooses to do, what chaos he's going to cause when he is God level. So the hype is real, and the first appearance of the character is down so much and is such a wanted collectible, it's more affordable than ever that it's one of the hottest in the world.
Plus, we got the Spider-Man 2 video game, which is going to be out by the time you see this video. And I think we may just see some symbiote serial killers in there as well. There's been 147 slabs added to the census since we talked about this book 6 weeks ago. The CGC 9.0 is up 4% above average. The 9.4 is up 33%. The newsstand 9.4 sold for $185. That's 29% above average. The direct market 9.6 is up 20%. The newsstand of that is up 9%. And then we have the 9.8 selling for $585, up 45%.
The book hit heights of $1,600 during the comic boom of 2021. Seeing itself for under $600 has a lot of buyers interested, especially when you consider that there's been 18 copies added to the census since we chatted about this book last 6 weeks ago. At the list, at number 8, taking it back to 1985, one of my favorite symbiote covers, Web of Spider-Man #1, the third ongoing Spider-Man series.
You tend to see this book on the rise when symbiote spec is about. It's one of those affordable books with a beautiful cover. There have been 26 more slabs added to the census since we talked about this just last week, with an 8.5 selling for $73, up 43% above average. The 9.4 up 58%. The 9.6 is up 36%. And then the 9.8 selling for $203, 17% above its 12-month average.
Something that I consider when buying 9.8s is figuring out what the percentage of which are actually on the census in that grade. This one's rather high. 25% of the total slabs are 9.8s of this issue. This is an indicator, one, that the book, you want to get it on the lower side, around that $200 marker seems very fair to me. You also may want to consider to pony up a little bit and grab that newsstand. Next on the list at number 7, we have Spawn #1, a comic book you probably own.
You guys talked about this book on the trending list. Now it's here on the Hot 10, probably because producer Jason Blum downright confirming that Spawn is going to see a 2025 release and that Jamie Foxx is still attached to it.
The comic fam really wants this movie to happen, and the sales prove it. The 9.0 is outselling the 9.4 right now. It's sold for $86, up 54%, where the 9.4 you could have gotten for $80. Someone overpaid or someone underpaid. That's up 36%. The 9.6 hit $106. This book has been trending under 100 all year. That's an increase of 38%. And then the 9.8 sold for $199 on the high end this past week. That is 18% over average, and 5 different copies outsold that 12-month.
Moving on to number 6 on the list, we have Amazing Spider-Man 6, the first appearance of the Lizard, and there's no denying the impact that the Spider-Man 2 video game has had on the comic book market, from symbiotes to the Lizard, which we have confirmation will be a villain in the game, and we got this amazing photo giving me the reptile vibes from Mortal Kombat 1. We have 2,873 slabs on the census, 23 more since it was on the Hot 10 back on August 28th. The CGC 3.0 selling for $850, 2% above average, but the 4.0 is up 29%, the 5.0 up 13%, and the 7.5 selling for $3,850, 23% above average.
We've seen some books take a major hit. Outstanding dips in some blue chip keys in the last year. This book is tough and high grade. It's Ditko Spidey single digit Silver Age goodness. And there's only 3 copies graded at a 9.8. And we have no public sales data to report on. Has never hit the internet. The 9.6, however, there are 10 copies, and we do have some data there. The heights were reached back during the comic boom of September 2021 for $33,600. And considering the current sales environment we're in, you would expect to see some major dips, and it's just not happening. We saw a 9.6 sell March of this year for $26,400. It's down by $7,000. That's not nothing, but compared to some books that are down by half, Spidey is seemingly the safest investment as it pertains to blue chip keys. Which brings us to number 5 on the list with G.I. Joe #1. And I can't help but think that my homie Aris Quinones during the Transformers G.I. Joe Energon panel at New York City Comic Con has spiked up some books. For the first time, it's not our fault, Jem.
Shout out to Aris over at Variant Comics. He did a great job hosting that panel, and I gotta say, after attending it and seeing what Joshua Williamson has planned for G.I. Joe, this looks like a safe bet. Issue #1, the first appearance of basically everybody. There's been 60 more books added to the CGC census since we talked about this just 2 weeks ago. We got a CGC 6.5 selling for $78, right about average. The 7.5 selling for $100, that's 4% up. And we got some newsstand sales, an 8.5 selling for $159, up 14%. The 9.4 newsstand selling for $285, up 27%.
9.8 G.I. Joe #1s are being picked up for around $700 right now. You heard that right. You can get a G.I. Joe 9.8 for under $1,000. And the newsstand is selling for double, and that's the numbers we're reporting on today. A Newsy 9.8 sold for $1,500. That's up 10%, and it's got to be because of how good Duke 1 and Cobra Commander sound. Cobra Commander, according to Joshua Williamson, sounds almost like a horror narrative, and Duke 1 sounds superb. What would it be like if you were part of the military, i.e. G.I. Joe, and you get hit with the information that aliens exist in the form of Transformers? It wouldn't be an exciting thing. It would be petrifying.
I love how the 2 different G.I. Joe books feel like they're going to have 2 completely different themes, and I trust Joshua Williamson.
Join the...
Yeah, get that take. Coughing up a lung.
Join the November mystery mail call. This month is a banger. I have a trade dress Swamp Thing #1 going out, 1 per box. First appearance of Alec Holland by none other than Lee freaking Bermejo. The virgins of that book dropped at New York City Comic Con and we're hitting $50+ all weekend long. Also going in 1 per box this month is a Tyler Kirkham Spider-Boy #1 trade dress. First solo series. Comic Tom 101 to join the community. We have membership options, which are cheaper, a buy it now one-time purchase option, as well as we are open officially for international buyers.
Moving on to number 4, it's no surprise to see this on the list, especially after that Variety article, but it's Omega Men 3, the first appearance of Lobo. The article does say that none of the actors from the Justice League movies would reprise their role in the DCU, but that Jason Momoa may return, just not as Aquaman. And then mentioning the Lobo rumor in the same article, I mean, come on, man. 8,935 slabs are on the CGC census. We have a 9.0 selling for $88, which is 5% above average. The 9.2 selling for $115, 29% above.
The 9.4 had 4 different sales outdo the 12-month average, the biggest being 125 for an increase of 11%. The 9.6 also had 4 different copies outsell the 12-month average, the highest being 163 for an increase of 9%. And the 9.8, 6 different copies outsold this 12-month average. People be buying Lobo, and we have a $395 leader. That's an increase of 14% on a book that could have been purchased around $300 all year long. It's creeping back up to $400 for good reason.
It's a safe bet. It's an affordable book. And to me, all but confirmed that Jason Momoa will be Lobo in the new DCU. And we also have to give a rest in peace to creator Keith Giffen.
His post-mortem tweet was the talk of the convention. It's already legendary as he was. And I encourage every single person to read one of my favorite JLA runs, drawn by Kevin McGuire, JLA International. It changed the way that comedy was utilized in superhero narratives, and really, I think, has been referenced in a lot of like shows that it's hit television that you would recognize. At the list at number 3, a book that is very tough and high grade, that is spiking like crazy. And I'm going to blame Eris again.
For the same reasons as G.I. Joe, we've got Transformers issue number 1, the first comic book appearances of our Autobots and Decepticons. We've got a CGC 7.5 selling for $151, 59% above his 12-month average. The 8.5 up 25%. The 9.0 is maintaining 2% above average. The 9.2, though, is selling for $200, 27% above average. And the 9.6 selling for $408 for an increase of 28%.
The 9.8 is down by about half. You can pick up a 9.8 for $1,200, and the newsstand 9.8, in which we are covering today, hit $2,800, which is about double what the direct market copies are going. It's getting very similar treatment to that G.I. Joe 9.8 that we just talked about for an increase of 8%. But here's one caveat. I've hunted this book at a 9.8 across the country at multiple conventions for years. Although the census seems high, we have a total of 620 copies. 20 new 9.8s have been added to the census since we chatted about this back in July of this year. This is not a 9.8 that sells often because collectors who own it like to keep it. They cherish it in their collections. Transformers is beloved. This is not an easy grade to acquire, even if there is a higher number on that CGC count.
Now, if you're upset with what happened in issue 1, Daniel Warren Johnson assured you that you're going to be upset the further on we get into the series, and I'm looking forward to it. Moving on to number 2, surprise, we have Wolverine issue number 1 on the list.
What's the deal with Wolverine? We all know what's going on, but the real information is the census count. It's blowing up. We had 19 more copies added to the census since we chatted about this just last week, and those books are hitting eBay. They are indeed selling. I saw many trade hands over at New York City Comic Con alone. This book has been hovering around the $700 to $800 marker, and it's coming in at around $600 this past week because supply has increased as the demand has increased. The 8.5 is selling for $140 for an increase of 18%. The newsstand of which is selling for $168, an increase of 24%. The direct market copy for a 9.4 is selling for $188, an increase of 1%, and the 9.6 is selling for $308, an increase of 15%. The 9.8, as mentioned, some members are getting for $600, but we saw a high sale for $761. That's an increase of 12%. I think a buyer at that rate probably knows that if they were patient, they could get it a little bit cheaper, but they probably don't care about that $100, especially considering that the movie has officially been put on hiatus as it pertains to release date.
Yeah, they took the movie off this schedule, but Deadline calling it Deadpool 3 Merc with a Mouth? Did we just get teased the title of this movie?
Although it's not confirmed, why would Deadline put that in their headlining title? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do we have more comics to consider? Hit the like, slap the subscribe button. We need your support. If you want to get some New York City Comic Con exclusives from me, well, we're going to be doing a drop this next week. I pushed the drop date on my website, comictom101.store, a little bit so we can focus on the Whatnot orders. I want to give a big thank you to everybody who supported not just myself, but the entire Whatnot Wednesday squad over the course of NYCC. Gem Mint was there, Davis Ryder was there, Rage Theo was there, Nate Made It, Sean from Carnivore Comics, the Golden Age Guru. We had the whole crew, we had a blast, and there was one clear back issue that everyone was hunting for at this convention, myself included, and it's #1 on the list.
Don't forget about Beachside, and don't forget about my boy Eris. Everybody was talking about the Swifties at New York Comic Con because the hottest comic book in the world is Uncanny X-Men issue 130, the first appearance of the Dazzler. And will Taylor Swift play her in the Deadpool 3 Merc with a Mouth movie or not?
Even Sean Levy, the director, went on record this past week because, quote, they sure are loud, in reference to those rumors. This is what he had to say. No comment, because that's a double whammy. That's Taylor related and it's MCU related. I'm no dummy. You're going to have to wait and see.
Sounds like a smart man to me. Meanwhile, collectors are picking up the 7.0s for about $113, which is 8% above average. The 8.5 up 52%. The 9.0 selling for $331 puts it 72% above average, and the 9.2 selling for $379 puts that up 68%.
The newsstand 9.4 sold for $440, up 46%. The 9.6 is up 5%. The newsstand 9.6 is up 35%. Are you catching our drift here? There are a lot of sales happening on this book, making it the hottest in the world, and we have record-breaking sales to discuss now. The newsstand 4.0 just sold for $110 for the first time in comic history, up 90%. The newsstand 7.0 just sold for $175 for the first time in comic history. That's up 17%. The last time an 8.0 sold was back in 2021. That sold for $240. It's up 25%, just broke the $300 marker. And the newsstand 8.5 last sold in August for $229, up 9%, now selling for $250.
And what happens when you get outpriced of that first appearance? You got to go to the first solo series, Dazzler issue #1, with a CGC 9.6 selling for $80, which is 36% above its 12-month average. And then we have a 9.8, which sold for $258, 34% above average.
Like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about all these comic sales. Do you own any of these books? Because I feel like at least half of these books could be in your back issue bin. And, as always,
Geek responsibly and stay minty fresh.
enough said.